line out, bag it up.
Hi everyone, I'm Ken Verderami, and welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Steel Shooter, where we talk about all things and only things Steel Challenge. Okay, everybody, as usual, welcome back to the podcast. Before we jump into today's topic, a quick general reminder, if you're interested in my dry fire training system, head on over to our website at steelshootbanners.com. And there you can find all 8 Steel Challenge stages in banner form for dry fire training, as well as over 40 USPSA training banners for different drills, 15 USPSA classifier stages, and even the 3 official Glock Shooting Sports Federation official stages if you're a Glock competition shooter. Of course, in addition, don't forget my latest book, Do You Still Feel the Need for Speed?, with over 40 new pages of material, including brand new chapters, updated chapters, and some new drills, and my mental management book, The Game Within the Game, Mastering the Steel Challenge Mental Game, both available at Amazon Books. Okay, guys, this one's going to be a relatively short podcast, I think. One of the things that I was reminded of a couple weeks ago was that, for relatively new shooters to Steel Challenge, maybe it would be useful to talk about more of the basics and not always a lot of the more advanced stuff that I talk about for shooters who've been doing this for a while and are looking to get themselves to the next level. I got to constantly remind myself there are lots of brand new shooters as well, and we need to talk about that as well. So what I'm going to talk about today really quickly is just basically what I would recommend as basic equipment and maybe optional equipment if you're going to want to get and be an effective Steel Challenge shooter. Okay? Really, really simple. All right. So let's just jump right into it here. So number one is a reliable gun. Okay? And what do I mean by a reliable gun? A reliable gun is one that you can shoot 1,000 rounds without a gun malfunction. Okay, let me repeat that. 1,000 rounds without a gun hiccup. Okay, now that includes your ammo. Okay, so the gun ammo combination must be that reliable. And the reason is very simple. In Steel Challenge, right, if you have a gun issue or an ammo issue on a string, that string is toast. It's never going to be one of your fastest runs, and so you've just lost your one failsafe, and now your other 4 strings must be perfect because you got to count them all, because your throwaway run was not because it was a slow run, it was because you had a gun issue, gun malfunction, hiccup, ammo, whatever, okay? That's really not acceptable in Steel Challenge, and so you need to do whatever you got to do and get a reliable gun. Right, for me, if you're a rimfire shooter, I shoot a Browning Buckmark that's been modified quite a bit, but the basic gun is a $375 Browning Buckmark. Okay, I put different grips on it. I put a magwell. I put a new barrel. All that stuff with the basic functioning gun is the same as you buy factory off the shelf. And the reason I did that is because that Buckmark eats any ammunition and never hiccups. I mean, literally. Doesn't matter what ammunition I put in there, it works. And that was really critical a while back, right, when we were having ammo shortages and you couldn't, and you were lucky to get anything, and so you just took whatever you got, but you still needed to function through the gun. And then the other thing about a Buckmark is that it's really simple to take apart. And because it's simple to take apart, you'll clean it more often. Okay, and let me tell you, I hate cleaning. In fact, my typical cleaning methodology is when the gun starts to hiccup in training, I know I need to clean it. Now, right, for a big match, I always clean the gun before the match, take it out and shoot 100 rounds through it, and then go for the match. But in regular training, I don't clean my gun that often. I hate cleaning. And so my signal to clean the gun is it's so dirty, it's not functioning correctly, okay? But you may not be that way, and that's fine. But you want a gun that's reliable. That is the number one most critical thing. Okay, magazines. I'm going to tell you that you want a minimum of 5 magazines. Why? Because there's 5 strings in a steel challenge stage. Okay, you need 1 magazine for each one. Don't do what I see a lot of USPSA guys is they just load up the magazine, right? They're shooting limited or something. They load up the magazine to max capacity 17 rounds, and then they don't pay attention. And on their second string, they only got 7 rounds or maybe 6 rounds because they had a couple makeup shots, and they get into the second string and they run out of ammo, right? That dreaded point at the target, click, nothing happens, and now they get to reload. Well, there goes that string out the window as well. Okay, so 1 magazine per string. Now, I will tell you, in the optional world, you probably want 6, but a minimum of 5, and it doesn't matter if you're rimfire or centerfire. When I shoot my open gun, centerfire open gun, I have 5 magazines. Even though each magazine holds 23 rounds, I don't load them up to that. I shoot 5. Now, the only exception is when I shoot PCC. Okay, I load up my PCC magazine with 40 rounds because it's a 40-round magazine, and I shoot, without changing magazine. I have a second magazine, but I typically never need it. Right? I don't need 40 rounds to in a 25-round stage. Okay, so, but that's the only exception. If you're going to get to the world of open guns, I would get a Seymour red dot. I know there's lots of choices out there, more expensive, less expensive, whatever. I've had a Seymour on every open gun since the beginning. My PCC, my open rimfire, my open centerfire, they've never failed. In fact, not only do they never fail, they never lose their 0. How many of you can say that with your red dot, that it never loses its 0? I can't remember the last time I zeroed one of my Steel Challenge guns. I check them like before a major, but it's like a 10-second check. I fire 10 rounds and go, yep, it's dead on like it always is, and then I move on. I don't give it a second thought. Okay, so I would consider a Seymour. I know there are other good ones out there as well, and that's fine. But the glass sight on that is round. It's plenty big, and it's good to go. Now, dot size. Okay, now this is something that a lot of people scratch their heads at. 12 MOA dot. Not an 8, definitely not a 6. You can go to 16 if you want to, but I use 12. Yes, it's a big dot, but let me tell you, if you expect to learn to shoot sub 2-second runs, that big dot is critical because it helps you see. You put that little tiny 6 mil dot on there, you're never seeing that if you're trying to shoot a sub 2-second run. Okay, so consider a 12 MOA dot. Okay, what about sighting your guns? I zero my guns to 20 yards. And the reason I do that is that's the most difficult shot you're going to have to make in Steel Challenge. And so you don't want to have any holdover and try to remember for a long shot, right? You want the hardest shot you have to be the easiest, and that means simply point the gun at the center and pull the trigger. Don't worry about, do I have to do do I have to hold high or low or what do I got to do? And I can tell you, even when I sight it for 20 yards with the Seymour on my guns, even at 7 yards for a roundabout, I don't need to have any holdover. I can point the gun dead on the center, and I'm just fine with plenty of margin. So I would recommend, maybe 18. You don't need to go more than 20. So either 18 or 20 yards and zero your gun there, and you should be fine. A shot timer. Shot timer is pretty important. It's hard to get good at Steel Challenge without one. Lots of good shot timers out there. CED, Competition Dynamics, any one of those. They all have the basic features that you need. And so any one of them works. I've had the same competition or the CED timer literally since I started shooting Steel Challenge. The little blue box. It's the one I've always had. Okay. A couple of other things. I'll consider these optional just because they're personal things that I produce, but you may not want to consider them optional. And that is my dry-fired banners. Yes, they're optional, but you can talk to anybody who has them. They'll tell you they've been a game changer for them when they started buying them, or when they bought them, started using them, and started exploiting them. It was amazing for most shooters how quickly they started to improve, right? And so I would think seriously, if you're serious about the sport, about those. My books, of course, right? They still to this day are the only books on the market dedicated 100% to the sport of Steel Challenge. One on the technical side, one on the mental side. I would consider them mandatory reading as well if you are going to be a serious student of the game, right? If you're a USPSA shooter, you've probably bought Ben Steiger's books, Mike Siekslander's books, right? Those are kind of mandatory reading as well. Larry Bassam's books, all that's kind of important stuff. Research and understanding of why we do things is going to be important. And then, the other things like podcasts, right, you listen to this podcast, so you probably already figured that out. But I've been doing podcasts on Steel Challenge for 4 years now. Got 100. This is podcast number 165. Yep, 165. So lots, and they're all available from the very beginning on Spotify. So you can go back and listen to podcast number 1 from 4 years ago all the way up to today. And so it might interesting to go back and re-listen to some of those topics, and you might pick up some of the nuances, things that didn't make sense to you back then because you were much earlier in your shooting career. Now that you've been around the block a few times and more sophisticated, things might make more sense, and they might find them helpful even after a year or two later. All right, so enough self-promotion there. But again, those are the kind of things that for me, that's what I would consider minimum equipment and training aids if you're serious about wanting to get better. If you do all that kind of stuff, I promise you, everything you need to make Grandmaster is contained in all that information. Then it's up to you to put it all together and do the hard work and make it happen. But I promise you, everything you need to succeed is contained in all that information. All right, so that's going to do it for this podcast. Remember, as always, slowing down is never the right answer. Never. You need to learn to see faster.